My name is Denise Martinez. I am the Assistant Dean of Cultural Affairs at the University of Iowa. I also am a faculty in family medicine, so I'm a family physician. Which that means is that I deliver babies, I take care of older people, I do women's health, I kind of do a little bit of everything. And so I'm super excited to be here with you today. I am the first person in my family to ever go to medical school. And so I think for those of you, anybody here would be the first person in their family to go to medical school? Wow, nice, excellent, great. And so because of that, I think some people might have family members who have done it before them and we're able to help them and get through that process. And then there are other people who might not have had people to help them on that way. And so for me, there are many things that I learned through my journey, and those are the things that I'm sharing with you all today. So hopefully it's super helpful of these types of things to be successful. So there are many things that I've learned, but I put it into a top 10. So we'll talk about the top 10 things that I wish I knew when I was a pre-medical student. So for those of you who are pre-medical students, I'm going to tell you how I was successful. How did I succeed? How did I get to where I am today? How did I become a faculty? How did I become a dean? These are all things that are important, and these are steps that I want to share with you today, okay? And a lot of this is how I saw others be successful. One of the reasons why I was successful is actually watching others who were successful and copying them and doing some of the things that they did. So we'll be talking about that, okay? So when did I decide I wanted to be a doctor? To be honest, I probably was around 4 or 5. My mom was pregnant with my sister, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, she gets to go to the doctor, and she's pregnant. We look at these pictures, a little baby inside, like all this really cool stuff, right? So I thought, oh my gosh, I totally want to be a physician. So how do you become from somebody who is interested in going into medicine to the next thing? Sorry, it's so hard for me to stand here. So again, I've wanted to do this for a long time. At first, I would say I was a secret pre-med student. My first couple of years of undergraduate school were not very good. I was like a C/D student. I wasn't very successful in my classes, and I thought, oh my gosh, there is absolutely no way I will ever get into medical school. As a matter of fact, I had an advisor tell me that. But actually, I did. I graduated in 4 years. I took 1 year off. So in between my undergraduate time and the time I went to medical school, during that application year, I actually did some mentoring and did some work with the inner city schools district. And then I got into a lot of great medical schools. And so I'll tell you how I did that. So I had some big failures on the way. I was not that perfect pre-medical student. And so we'll talk about that and what that means for you, for those of you who might have had some failures. I've also had some really great successes as well. So the first thing I want you to know, lesson number 1, the road is not always straight. So in my mind, when I decided I wanted to be a doctor, I thought, oh my gosh, you have to do this, you have to go to college, and then right away, you can't have any time in between, and then you need to go to medical school, and then you need to go be a doctor, and then you need to hurry up and be done with it all so that you can live your life, okay? So the road isn't always straight, and that's okay. I think a lot of students feel like, gosh, if I just don't do it this way, it's going to be a problem, and it's not. So taking time off. Many people take time off. Now probably more than 50% of our class takes time off. And actually, as medical schools, we like that. The students tend to be a little bit more mature, have had a little bit more life experience. You don't have to take time off, but if you do, or if you decide to do something else for a little while, you can always go back, and that's totally fine. The road does not have to be this, then this, then this. And if it's not straight, to be honest, it might make you a better applicant. So I think remembering that the road is not always straight is an important thing. My next lesson, sorry as I try to work this computer, is life does not start at the end. So again, this is very similar. I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot start my life until I'm a doctor. So how long does college usually take? About 4 years, right? How long does medical school take? About 4 years. What do you do after that? Residency. How long does residency take? At least 3 years. 3 to probably 8. So if you say, I'm not going to live my life until I get through all of that journey, then you're not living your life. I lived my life through the process. If you see me, most people think I look pretty young, but I did. I've already done undergrad. I did medical school. I took a year off in between. I did 3 years of residency, and now I'm a 4th-year faculty member. Do I look super old? So, and I've done a lot of life in that. I've fallen in love. I've fallen out of love. I've gotten married. I've traveled the world. I've done so many different things through the entire process. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I just need to get through all of this so I can start my life because I want to be young when I'm done with all of this, you're not thinking right. That through the process, through the journey, you're still living life. You're still doing things, and you need to be remembering that. The next lesson is that you can make it. I truly believe, well, first of all, physicians are not significantly smarter than just regular people. I think in general, physicians are just regular people with really regular intelligence. I think that sometimes, at least for me, I thought, oh my gosh, there's absolutely no way I can be a doctor. They are so smart, they're so beyond, there's absolutely no way. But the thing that I've learned is actually anybody can be a doctor. Any of you can, I believe that if this is what you want to do, you absolutely can make it. What I think, though, is the most important thing about that statement is that you have to have the right motivation. So the wrong reasons to be a doctor. If your parents are the ones who are pushing you to become a physician, that is the wrong reason to be a doctor. It has to be your own passion. I have known people who said, well, my parents made me do it, or this is what my parents wanted for me. And they ended up dropping out of medical school. They ended up dropping out of residency. They ended up wasting a lot of time in your life. And so if it's not your drive but your parents' drive, that's not the reason to do it. It will not get you through, okay? If you think that it's sexy, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a doctor. I'm cool, it's powerful, doctor, that sort of thing. If that's your motivation, if you tell people, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, if that is the reason why you're doing it, that's not going to get you through either, okay? If it's money, I won't lie, I drive a Lexus, I do okay. But there has to be easier ways to make money than going to medical school and doing residency. It's not an easy journey. And so if your main motivation, and I also have a nice amount of debt. The average medical student debt is $150,000. Not that I can pay that off. I can write my check every month. I don't have a problem doing that because I make enough money. But money cannot be the motivation. So what is the motivation to go to medical school? If you love the body, if you're interested in learning, if you like, helping people. I mean, I know everybody says that, but those truly are good reasons to go to medical school. If you feel like that you like specialized skills, if you're good with your hands, those are all good reasons. If you feel like this is your passion, this is what you feel like you need to be in life, those are good reasons to go to medical school. And when things get hard, that inner motivation is when it's going to keep you going. So I believe all of you can absolutely go to medical school. I believe that all of you could be successful. Absolutely, I truly believe that. But I think you have to do it with the right motivation and realize it's going to be hard work. Nobody told me this. I felt like a lot of people told me why I can go to medical school. But I just want to make sure that you all know that you all can go to medical school. The next lesson is one of the most important. Mentorship is incredibly important. What is mentorship? What is a mentor? So a mentor, somebody asked me last session, is somebody titled a mentor where you can go like hire or find? No, nobody's really titled a mentor, but what mentors are people who are investing in you, who are helping you get to that next step in your career. You have to have mentors to be successful. Sometimes people think that there's this magical one mentor who has all of these magical properties that will be, both your parent and your friend and give you all the special knowledge so that you can go into medical school. So I have some people say, oh, I don't have somebody like that. I don't have a mentor. Well, I don't think any of us need a mentor. I think we need multiple mentors. So throughout my career, I've had many people who have invested in me and believed in me and helped me on the journey. What I realized, through finding different, and not all of them helped me in different ways. Sometimes I had a mentorship for academics. I was always interested in leadership and diversity work. I had a mentor who mentored me in leadership and diversity work. And so you can have different mentors for different aspects of your life. To be successful, you need these mentors. The thing that I didn't realize, and that what I have realized quickly throughout my time, is that there are many people who actually do want to help you. You have to find them. And so, for example, I had a pre-medical advisor that told me, there's no way you're going to get into medical school. I fired them and found a new one. And so I found somebody else who believed in me and thought that I could do it. And so how do you find these people that will invest in you and help you on your journey, okay? I think that it's human nature to like people who like you. So if you are looking for somebody to mentor you and there's a specific position, or there might be a physician or a certain person that's doing something that you admire, if you go up to them or email them and say, hey, I like what you're doing, would you be willing, I've read your research, or I know what you do as a physician, or I've seen that you've been a very successful pre-med advisor. I would love to sit and talk to you sometime, and so that we can talk and let me tell you a little bit more about some of my interests. They'll say, oh my gosh, you like me? You like me? You like what I do? Let me invest in you. Let me teach you. Let me build a relationship with you so I can help you. Here at the pre-medical conference, I won't lie, there's some people who are not doing it right. So if you are at this conference, there are so many opportunities to meet potential mentors and meet people who might be able to help you on your journey. There are certain people, when I go to many of these conferences, that I'll remember. They came up to me and they said, they introduced themselves and they gave me a lot of information about themselves, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember them. And then when they apply to my medical school, I remember them, and then I'll advocate for them. So you just never know who you're meeting and how they might be able to help you. I have students who come up to the table and do this. And then they walk away. Or they just grab some brochures. Like the brochures have all the information, which they really don't. But the most important thing at a conference like this is doing something. Hold on one second. Knowing your 1-minute story. You need to be able to go up to people and to shake their hand and say, hello, whoever. Hello, Dr. Martinez. My name is Denise Martinez. I'm currently a third-year undergraduate student at UC Davis. I'm really interested in going to medical school, and I'd be very interested in hearing a little bit more about your institution. And these are some of the things that interest me and make me a little bit different. If you do those things, if you're able to introduce yourself, if you're able to share a little bit about your story, what is your 1-minute story that you can share so people can get to know you a little bit better? That is going to help you build connections, and that is going to help you become a memorable person so that in the future other people will remember you and want to try to help you. And that truly happens. And so I think that's a super important skill and something. So when you're here, you need to be introducing yourself. You need to be sharing about yourself without even being prompted, and so that you can build those relationships. Oh, and with the 1-minute story, Google. Many of you have smartphones, or some of you, or access to internet. If there are schools you may be interested in them, if you say, oh, I looked you up, and I saw that you have this, and that's why I'm interested in talking to you. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, you looked us up? Yes, I totally want to talk to you, and what's your name, and let me remember you, and that sort of thing. So doing that little bit of research can really help you stand out amongst everybody else. Oops, sorry. So the next lesson, if I'm doing this right, is that medicine has a culture. I had not grown up in a family that had physicians. So I had to learn and sort of fumble through this culture as a medical student. And there's some things that I wish I knew at an earlier time. And so these are the things I'm going to share with you. I think the one thing that I would remember is that the medical culture is not always right. Like I'm not, what I'm telling you today about the way some of the culture of medicine is, I'm not saying that this is right and it's the way things should be. What I'm saying is that this is the way things are. And hopefully with time, medicine will continue to change and become, the culture will change a little bit too. One of the biggest things in the culture that we'll talk about right now is the hierarchy. So this is not something that I knew as a pre-medical student. There is a hierarchy in medicine. So what does that mean? So we'll talk about the hierarchy in a second, but there is this hierarchy of doctors and where everybody is in their own rank. You'll even see doctors walk through the hospital in this order on the hierarchy, or when you're in a conference, you'll see people sit around the table based on the hierarchy. So the top of the hierarchy are senior attending physicians. What does that mean? Those are physicians that have been around for a long time. They might have a little bit more gray hair. They'll be wearing a really long white coat. Everybody talks to them, and they always address them as doctor. And these are these senior attending physicians. The next people are junior attending. So I'm a junior attending. So that means I've finished through all my residency. I'm a practicing physician. I've been around, but I've only been around 4 years. I haven't been around 25 years. So I'd be considered a junior attending physician. The next person in the hierarchy is a chief resident. So the chief resident, so when you finish all of your residency, or at the last year of residency for some specialties, or sometimes you're elected to be the chief resident. And so they're not attending physicians. They haven't finished residency yet, but they're regarded with some authority. Then you have senior residents. So those are the people who are towards the end of their residency. Junior residents are toward the beginning of their residency. Then you have the intern. So that's the first year of residency. Does any of this make sense from Grey's Anatomy? And then after that, you have fourth-year medical students. So that's the sub-intern. Then you have third-year medical students who are rotating on the wards with everybody else, so they're third years. And usually they're participating in a team. Then you have first and second-year medical students who are off doing shadowing. And then you have pre-medical students. Do you see where you're at? And so what does this mean for you? It means a couple of things. One thing is professionalism. So at this point in your career, at this part of the hierarchy, you need to address everybody with an asterisk and above as doctor. People will come up to me all the time. I'm told I look pretty young, which I'll take it. And they'll say, "Hi, Denise, how are you doing?" And they're a pre-medical student. And I'll say, "My name is Dr. Martinez, and I'm doing well." And the reason why I say that is, do I really care if somebody calls me Denise? Not really. What I'm doing is I'm trying to teach students that if you talk to a medical professional who has a title and you don't call, or you email them and you don't use their title, sometimes you'll be seen as unprofessional. So because this is where you are at the hierarchy. So at this point in your career, you need to be addressing every single person who has a title by a doctor. And then they will think that you got it, you know what's going on. And that's something I didn't know right away. So that's important to know. The other thing with this is that we've had some pre-medical students. So I do a couple of things. I am the advisor for MAPS, the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students at Iowa. We have about 100 members, and so I do a lot of activities with those pre-medical students. Sometimes, and this is not very often, that we have students that come in sort of very entitled. So going into like a physician shadowing opportunity where a physician is with you and you're shadowing them, and then the shadower is like, "Well, they didn't talk to me the whole time, or they didn't do this for me or do that." At this point, it's hard because number one, you're at the bottom of the hierarchy. And number two, when somebody is taking time to spend time with you, as a physician, they often have many other things that they're doing, like especially the most important thing is taking care of the patient. And so at this point, you are important and you need to know that, and I believe in you, and I'm glad that you're here, but you also have to understand your role, have to understand your place, and treat people with respect. And then as you go up the hierarchy, things change a little bit as far as, sorry, I'm struggling. So the next lesson, you will have failures and so does everybody else. So I think that I was really scared by a lot of pre-medical students. I thought everybody had their stuff together, and so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, I got an A in all organic chemistry." And I thought so many people were super successful. Or same thing with even now as a faculty, I'll see other faculty members who I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're doing so much more research than I'm doing," or other people in similar roles, or through medical school saying, "Oh, they totally did so much better than me on that test." And the thing that I've now understood is that all of people who go into medicine are often very successful. Almost everybody who goes into medicine will fail at some point. And it's often crushing. I have many crying students come into my office because they failed a medical exam. And they think, oh my gosh, my career is ruined. I can't do anything else in my life because I failed this exam. And the thing is, there isn't one failure that will make you not successful. We will all have these failures and still be successful and still have excellent careers. But the thing is that nobody talks about them. Oftentimes when we start talking about our failures, I'll hear doctors say, oh yeah, I totally didn't pass my boards the first time. Oh yeah, I totally failed that class. Oh yeah, I totally got that horrific evaluation and somebody thought I was completely incompetent. Those things happen, and the thing that I know now is that they happen to all of us at some point. And so sometimes I felt like I was the only one like, oh my gosh, I had that terrible evaluation. And I think a lot of people feel like there's this one thing that will not make me successful, but that's not true. This year we even had a medical student who I really believe in who failed the entire first year of medical school. He's just taking it again, and he's like, well, my career is ruined. And I said, in 20 years, nobody will know about this, and you're going to be totally fine. And so not that we want to fail everything. Of course, we can't fail everything in life. But these failures can happen, and they happen to all of us, and it's totally okay. It doesn't mean that, that your life is done, or your career is done. So the next lesson is very similar, is that at times you might not feel like you're good enough, but you are. So I've had people tell me that I'm not good enough. I've had people tell me that there's no way I'd get into medical school. As a matter of fact, I put up my transcripts from my first 2 years of medical school. I was doing a presentation to some pre-med advisors. And I said, what do you think about the student? I said, this is their background, this is their family income, this is this and this is that. And somebody raised their hand and they said, I would advise them that there's no way they could go to medical school. And then I said, that was me. That was my transcript. And so there might be some people who will say that you're not good enough or things are not quite right. When you look at those GPAs of 3.7 and 3.8 on average for a lot of medical schools or other things, maybe many of you were there. I wasn't. And I thought, this is it. There's absolutely no way I can do it. But you can. You can. And again, sometimes it takes extra work. Sometimes students need to do post-bac programs. So that means after you finish college, if your grades or MCAT score is not quite there, you do a year or two of work after that to sort of improve things. But another year or two is totally fine, and that's not an uncommon thing. That there are ways to do it, but you might not feel like you're good enough, but you totally are, if this is what you want to do and you have the right motivation. Why isn't this working? Okay. So the other thing, and this is a lot having to do with medical culture, one thing that's really valued in medicine and helps people to be very successful is confidence. And for me, there are many times where I don't feel very confident, and this faking it till I make it method has really helped me out. And so what is the fake it to make it method? So when I was a third year in medical school, those are the years that you do rotations. So you do all these rotations and you go and you become you're a medical student, and all of a sudden you realize like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. You're around all of these physicians who've been doing this for years, you're just starting out, and you're like, I don't know a thing. I realized very quickly that the medical students who appeared confident, even though they just knew as much as I knew, did much better on the rotation. And so my first rotation I did okay, but after that usually there's something called honoring. I honored every single rotation after that. And most of that had to do with projecting this confidence. And to be honest, it was a confidence I often didn't really have. And so learning how to talk about yourself, this is not an easy thing to do. So I have students who ask me, so for example, when we're talking about introducing yourself or talking about yourself when you are talking to recruiters, or talking about yourself in an interview process, it can be really hard to talk about yourself and the things that make you special and unique. Has anybody ever noticed that? Or just, yeah. So you have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to be able to talk about yourself, how to share in a non-arrogant way, but it's not arrogance, but it's talking about what makes you unique and how you can share that, and so other people are excited about you and know that you're unique. The other fake it till I make it method is when people ask me questions. So as a medical student, and probably as a pre-medical student too, often people will look at you and say, hey, tell me what is the number one cause of pulmonary hypertension. And at least for me, when I get told, like, tell me this, I feel like a deer caught in the headlights. I don't know if you have deer out here. We have deer in Iowa. And so what I learned is, instead of being like, I don't know, if I talk out loud what I'm thinking in my head, that can help a lot. So I can start saying, well, the things that I know. Well, I know that with pulmonary hypertension, that sometimes people can experience this, and so I think that this might be the number one cause because I've seen this before. And so I start saying this process out loud, and somebody will say, oh yeah, no, you're totally right. Or they'll say, you weren't right, but I can see the way that you were thinking. And so being able to sort of think that process out loud is actually an important skill, and it will make you appear more confident instead of being that person that's like, I don't know. And it will help you to for people to think that you're thinking about things and that you're a smart person. So I think it's really important to project confidence, even if you're not feeling it, and oftentimes I'm not. So my next lesson is be open, you never know. So for me, I have a lovely picture of Iowa. So I'm from Seattle. I lived in Southern California too. And then I did medical school at Tufts in Boston. And I remember at some point, and so when I finished with my medical school, my partner at the time was finishing at Harvard, and he wanted to be a urologic surgeon. And his mentor said, do you know where you need to interview? You need to interview at the University of Iowa. And I said, no, I'm not going to Iowa. I don't even know where Iowa is. I don't think that would be a good match for me. I've only lived in big cities. This is the only thing I want to see with my life. I thought, oh my gosh, I want to get back to Seattle and get back to my hometown, or things like that. So I thought, my life is over. What are we going to do? So we interviewed all over the country, and I said, okay, fine, we'll interview at the University of Iowa. And so I interviewed up and down the East Coast and the West Coast, and went to LA, I went to Seattle, and all sort of great programs and that sort of thing. And then we ended up interviewing in Iowa, and it was my number one choice. I absolutely loved it. The people were right, the culture was right, it was diverse. I was like, these are my people, I didn't even know it. And so I thought, okay, I'll go to Iowa. The next thing that I realized is when I finished up my residency, I was offered a faculty position. They say, okay, you'll be a faculty here. And I thought, cool, I've always wanted to be a faculty. I get to be in academic medicine. This is awesome. And they said, where do you see yourself in 10 to 15 years? And I said, in 10 to 15 years, I want to be like, I think I want to be like the dean of diversity or somewhere, because I love diversity work. I think this is going to be awesome. So that's what I see. That's what I told my chair. 2 months later, the person who was the associate dean of diversity at our medical school ended up leaving, and they needed a faculty member to go in and fill that position. And I had the most experience out of any faculty who applied, because I had been doing diversity work through that entire time, through residency and through medical school, and even as an undergraduate. And so I became an associate dean as a first-year faculty member. I was the interim associate dean that year. And then that next year, they created a position for me, because I did very well, as the assistant dean. So I'm the assistant dean in the office. And again, that would have never happened. It's my dream. I get to do exactly what I want to do, what I always thought I was going to do. And the reason why I was able to do that is I was open. I think sometimes people say, no, I have to do this, and I only can be here, and I only can do this. But I would say, you never know. And so if there are opportunities, or if there are places that you've never considered before, it might not work out for you, but I think keeping an open mind is really important, because you never know what will happen in your career. And there could be much better opportunities in places that you've never even considered. And so I would highly suggest that. I'm probably the youngest assistant dean, I know I am, in the history of my school. And we're a big institution. So I feel very fortunate, and I guess what I'm saying again is you have to be open. And that was the same thing. I wanted to go to the University of Washington for medical school. I ended up going to Tufts because I got waitlisted at University of Washington. It couldn't have been a better decision, and it couldn't have been a better opportunity. And so keeping an open mind, I think, is very important. My next lesson, and my last one, is that you need to do what you care about. So if you're doing all of those things in life, whether it's the specialty you choose, so for example, I'm a family physician. Where I did medical school, family medicine wasn't quite as highly regarded. It's not as prestigious as some other medical fields, but I knew instantly, as soon as I did family medicine, I was with my people. I loved it, and I loved being able to do so many things, and I have long-term relationships with my patients. I get to deliver babies. I get to do so many things. I thought, oh, this is my specialty. I remember actually being at a party once with a very prestigious Harvard faculty member, and once I told him that I was going to be a family physician, I was still in medical school, he refused to talk to me for the entire night. And so, but even if something isn't prestigious, it's exactly what I wanted to be. It's exactly what I love. And so family medicine was the right choice for me. And so what I would say is that you have to do what you care about, even if it might not be as prestigious or even if it might not make quite as much money, because then it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're doing what you're passionate about. Same thing as undergraduate students as far as extracurricular activities. People always ask me, what is the exact recipe to get into medical school? I mean, there's some general guidelines, but I think actually the most important thing is that, especially with extracurricular activities, is that you're doing what you really enjoy. If you do what you enjoy or you're passionate about, that you'll excel in it. And then you'll be able to have those positions that people will think that you are really excellent, and that will actually reflect much better in your application for medical school. Whether it's dancing or for sorority or fraternity or whatever, if you are passionate about it, that's what you need to be doing, okay? So I think doing what you care about is incredibly important. How are we doing on time? So next, here's my contact information. Denise Martinez at uiowa.edu. And then I want to leave, we have about 10 minutes for some questions. What questions do you all have? So honestly, I don't mind, I love emails. And if you have questions, that's totally excellent. And I totally respond back to you if you want to talk on the phone. I'm totally fine with that too. Yes. So the question is, can international students get into medical school? And the answer is, depends. So I'd say in general, so unfortunately, many state schools, including the school that I work at, do not accept international students because of funding reasons. There are some medical schools that will accept a couple of medical students, maybe one or two a year. And so it's a lot harder for people who have an international background. However, people who are permanent residents can easily get into any medical school.
Hi. I'm disabled. I have a fractured femur right now that's been declared non-union. So, but I've always wanted to be a doctor, since I was 8. So, would you consider your specialty disabled friendly for, people that want to be doctors but are disabled?
No, absolutely. And if this is your dream, then yeah, no, totally, absolutely. There are some specialties that might be a little bit more challenging. So things like surgery, depending if you often will have to stand for long periods of time. But my specialty would be very friendly. I'm a family physician, and there are a number of specialties that would be very friendly. And so if that's your dream, then yes, go for it. I think that's excellent. And I think you'll have a very unique perspective to share with your patients. Other questions? Yes?
Female, is it harder
So the question is, as a female, is it harder to get into medical school? I guess my answer would probably be no. On average, most medical schools are about 50-50 now. That was not the case even maybe 15 years ago plus. But with time, I think medical schools in general are becoming much more 50-50. So I don't think being a female has made it more difficult. I think that there can be obstacles, either being a female or I'm a minority, I'm Latina, that have made it difficult for certain things throughout my life that might have been a little bit more challenging to overcome, but I think that's part of the thing that made me interesting and unique as I applied to medical school.
Okay, so I know that most medical students think that biology is the right, So I know that most medical students think that, or pre-med students think that biology is the right major of coursework to go down, but would you suggest taking classes that are not only like the medical school required classes to get in, or like would you suggest maybe double majoring in something that you're really passionate about?
So the question, I did biology, and the reason why is because I wanted to graduate in 4 years. And at my institution, being a pre-medical student, it was harder if you chose another major to get all of your prerequisites in for medical school. However, my real advice is honestly do ever what you want. If there are other classes outside of medicine or science or biology that you super want to do or want to enjoy, and you feel like you're able to fit in and your finances work, that you can do it, or if you need extra time, or if you want to double major and you feel like you're able to manage that, then I'd say go for it. Because oftentimes this will be the last chance for you to learn some of those things in a college setting. But do what you feel like you can handle. So for me, I felt like biology worked for me, but oftentimes medical schools like people who are non-science majors. But if you're a science major, that's totally fine. So do what is interesting to you and what you feel like you can balance. Yes.
Hello. So I have a couple questions about being open-minded. You talked about being open-minded, and I think I am open-minded. And I kind of believe in, wherever you end up, it's kind of where you're meant to be sometimes, and you'll be happy there a lot of the time. So how do you go into the admissions process with that mindset? Do you apply to 100 schools, or?
That would be very expensive. I didn't have that kind of money, so.
And do you tell the admissions people that you're open-minded, or because normally I feel like that would be something they don't want to hear. They want to hear that you really want to attend their school.
So good question. So I would say, as far as choosing schools to apply to, I would number one start with your budget and how much time you have. And so my budget I think I applied to 15 schools because I felt like that's what I could afford to do. Some people might have more money than me and maybe are able to apply to more, but I think the average amount is about 15 schools. As far as building a list, I would get advice. So I'd talk to people around you, I'd talk to pre-med advisors, I would talk to doctors, people around who might know about different medical schools and just kind of get a sense of, hey, where do you think would be a good place for me? I think the best place to start are your state schools because oftentimes you have California is a little bit harder, but it can be a little bit cheaper, and then obviously you're not having to travel as much trying to get to a state school. The next thing I would look at are schools across the country, but particularly if you're out of state, there are number one private, so private schools accept obviously all out of state because they're not an in-state school. The other thing I would look at are schools that are public schools, but look at their percentage of out-of-state players. So for example, at the University of Iowa, 1/3 of our class is out of state. So that's actually a really high amount for a state school. And so if you're going to apply to another state school, if they only take one person a year out of state, it might not be worth applying to that school because the chances are that you're going to be that one person is probably pretty low. So those would be the ways I would do it. And I would look at the schools. I'd look at them online, and I would ask questions. And if you have questions before you go to that school, you can call the admissions advisor and be like, hey, give me some advice. This is some of the things I'm interested in. And honestly, it's hard to know until you're actually there. Sometimes when you interview, everything might look perfect on paper on the internet, and then you're there and you're like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. I hate it so much. But there are other places that you might go and you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted, and I had no idea. So if that's that openness piece. But as far as making it list, that's how I would go about it.
You said that your GPA was extremely low your first and second year of college. How did you make up for that academic deficit?
Good question. So the way I was successful is, first of all, most medical schools, what they're looking for is, can you handle the curriculum? So I did very poorly my first year, year and a half, and then I did much better. And so I did well and got a lot of A's in my higher science courses. And so that proved to the admissions committee that I was capable, and I also did well in the MCAT. So those things secured me a spot in medical school, even though my GPA, total GPA, was not high at all. It was actually pretty low. I get above 30, which is what would be considered pretty competitive. So if you get above 30, that's a good thing. So basically, for people who are interested in getting medical school, if you have a high MCAT score, so above 30, and a lowish GPA, you can still be successful into getting into medical school. If you have the opposite, if you have a really high GPA, but a lowish MCAT score, you can still be successful. One of those two things has to show that you're able to handle the curriculum. And so if you have both of those things, obviously that makes you much more competitive of an applicant. But one of those things has to be good. And so for some people, they have to do, if their GPA is not great and their MCAT's okay, then they need to do a post-bac program to help improve their GPA to get into medical school.
Is there a website where it kind of compiles all the medical schools and what they like and stuff like this, or do you have to go to the people each and every?
There is some data that is collected, I know, through the AAMC, so the American Association of Medical Colleges. So there's some like preliminary data, so you can see men, women, what are the MCAT scores, GPAs, and that sort of thing. But I think as far as specifics, you have to, like the really specifics, going to each individual website.
Do you know the impact that taking your prerequisites at a community college will have on admissions?
Good question. So the question was, what is the impact potentially of prerequisites being done at a community college? So in general, there are some classes that might be seen. Okay, so I think you have to have some higher level science classes done at a university. So again, to just prove that somebody can do the curriculum. Because I do think this is a little bit silly, but sometimes the community colleges might be considered easier. And again, I don't think that's always the case, but I think that most medical schools need to see at least those higher level science courses being done at a university in order to compare apples to apples during the admissions process. Sometimes there are some schools that say, oh, no, you have to do the organic chemistry series or the I know at our school they do recommend the biology series being done at a university. But those are dependent on different schools. But there have to be some higher level courses done at a university.
So when did you take the MCAT?
So the question is, when did we take the MCAT? So I personally took I did not feel like I could study during school. I felt like that was entirely too much. I was studying for school during school. I didn't feel like I could do both. Some people are great. Some people can totally do both. I wasn't one of those people. So I graduated, and then that next day started studying from the MCAT. Back in the day when I took the MCAT, they only offered it twice a year, and it was on paper. And so I took it that August. So I studied the entire summer, took it that August, and then got my application in, and then applied during that year that I was off. However you want to do it is totally fine, as long as you can handle it. If you don't feel like during school you can study for it well, then don't do it, because it's not worth it. But if you feel like you can, and you do have that dedicated time to study and prepare well and have a good score, then you can totally do it during school too. Everybody's, depends on how you are. So, yes.
What did you do for your extracurricular before applying to medical school?
So the question is, what did I do for my extracurricular? So I'll tell you what I did, and I'll tell you what's required, or what everybody should be doing at least. So I did some volunteering. I volunteered at a hospital, which I enjoyed. I shadowed physicians, which I also enjoyed. I did a lot of leadership positions. So I was the assistant director of diversity at my college for the student body, and there are other like multicultural senator and some of those kind of things, because those are the things I really enjoyed and liked. And so everybody who applies to medical school has to have shadowing experience. You have to. The reason why is because they're going to ask you, why do you want to be a doctor? And you can say, oh, I saw a doctor so-and-so, and I've seen it, and I've experienced it, so I know I want to be a doctor. And so a lot of medical schools don't feel like people have enough experience if they haven't done any shadowing. So you need to have shadow experience. You also have to have some volunteering, whatever that means to you. So if there are things that you like or things that you're passionate about, volunteer. The other thing is other extracurricular activities. Do whatever you want to do. Do what you love. If you're a singer, if you're a dancer, if you're a writer, if you're whatever, if you play chess or I don't know, who knows, whatever you like to do, or you're an athlete, that will help make you unique. And if you do what you like, you're going to excel at it, and that will be much stronger on your application. So again, extracurriculars, a lot of them, do whatever you want, with balancing your schoolwork.
How does that? So what if you don't have as much like volunteer hours, but you actually have like clinical hours, like practicing clinical hours?
What?
For instance, I've been in EMS for 2 years. I've done EMS education for 2 years. I'm a phlebotomist.
Yeah, so the question is, what if you have a lot of practical experience and have done things like being an EMT or EMS or being a phlebotomist? No, that's awesome. And I think that will show really well on your, I think those are things on your application that will look really excellent. So yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And that means that you've had a lot of clinical experience. And so that will work for medical school application.
A quick question. How often can you take the MCAT? What's the period?
I forget, what is it now? Does anybody know?
No, meaning before you said twice a year. Now, how many times a year is it?
Yeah,
after?
I don't know. I haven't taken the MCAT in a long time. Who has taken it? Because I think you can sign up for it almost any month now.
Any month.
Yeah. So, and that's it. So thank you so much. It was nice meeting you all. And if you need anything, email me. Okay?